The A-List Podcast is brought to you by FanDuel, the exclusive wagering partner of the CLNS Media Network.
Hey everyone, Kwani Lunis here for the A-List Podcast. We have a special edition for you today because, of course, it's the playoffs, so we have to prepare accordingly. First, we're going to talk to GreenRunsDeep. That's his Instagram handle. He's one of the biggest Celtics fans you've probably seen out there. If not, go check him out on Instagram. And then right after that, we're going to talk to the opposing side, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution's Lauren Williams. She's the beat reporter covering the Hawks, and she's going to give us a little inside look as to what we should expect in this first round matchup. So our first guest for this playoff extraordinaire podcast is, you may have seen him on Instagram, GreenRunsDeep. Welcome. Thanks for honoring us with some of your time today.
Hey, you might have seen my ugly face on the Jumbotron acting crazy with the fans at the Garden, but now I'm on the A-list. I'm happy to be on here. I appreciate you guys giving me your time and your platform.
I got to call you out, though, because when we talked about this earlier, you're like, if I'm on the A-list podcast, it's going to now be what, the B-list?
I'm a B-list. I'm just like somebody that stands back. I take content. I record funny things, but you guys are the A-listers. You guys your faces are known whether it be covering the Celtics, or a couple of you guys are very well known for speaking up about Black Lives Matter. I follow a lot of your opinions on that, and I appreciate what you guys do for the city of Boston. Gary, I listened to a long episode of what you were talking about a couple weeks ago, and just being on the pod with you, that really feels cool to be like talking to you guys.
Bro, appreciate it. It's good to have you here.
Gary, I told you, Gary, somebody put inside your mama love you, boy. I told you.
The price just went up.
Right.
The price just went up.
We're about to use that clip for all of our future negotiations.
I'm Grant Williams in this piece. I'm December Grant Williams.
Nah, you're OG. You're more the Al Horford type, but he got cuter eyes than you.
Okay.
Hey,
I'll take that.
He's 100 right there, man. Al in my eyes.
That's the soundbite. All right. Well, as a super fan, a lot of people know you on Instagram for your love of the Celtics. You're also very critical when needed, but for the most part, it's all love. What are you looking forward to from this Atlanta matchup specifically? I want to hear a fan perspective. We've never had a fan on the show, actually, so you're the first one.
So first things first, this regular season has gone by and it's dragged on because us real fans have been having that sickness in our mouth since Game 6 of the finals last year. And the real season is about to begin this coming week. Saturday, we got a huge matchup with Atlanta. And, I feel like the last couple of years, the Celtics have never had, a layup matchup. Like, last year, we got Brooklyn in the first round. It was a sweep, but we were all nervous about it going into it. This one, I'm not going to come on here and say we're taking the broomsticks out before the series starts because I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. But I really feel happy, after they won the other night versus Miami, it was like a breath of fresh air. They deserve this.
Yeah, and the point that you bring up is one that I know not only the media, but I imagine fans are concerned as well about the Celtics taking these Hawks as serious as they should. Is that something that concerns you going into this series, knowing how the Celtics have kind of dominated them in the regular season and how, the Celtics are kind of in the penthouse and Atlanta is that back door behind the back door behind the back door, they get into the building.
After that massacre on Easter, I think that the Celtics should sit down their starters for one of the games and maybe let the bench players play versus the Hawks one game. Now, to be honest, that's 1,000,000% on my mind. They cannot take this team lightly. They signed a real coach at the midway through the season. Most teams do not do that until in the off season. And I'm a little bit nervous about the coach. I will say that Quin Snyder is a very good coach.
Yeah, it looks like. I mean, were you one of those people that thought, as a lot of people I thought felt that way, that even though Miami is flawed, and we saw the flaws last night, but a team with Jimmy Butler, Kyle Lowry, Tyler Hero, Bam Adebayo, and even Gabe Vincent, all them dudes have had their moments against the Celtics. All them dudes have put in that work against the Celtics. That team would have kind of caused some anxiety, considering they felt like they had been, injured all year, and they were finally coming together. And then I don't know. I mean, you saw the game. You saw like Toronto Lowry. Like that's a Lowry I remember getting in the Celtics. Like when him and DeRozan used to go 1-2 punch on the Celtics. Were you kind of concerned about a potential matchup with Miami, considering like they got 5 dudes who have gotten in the Celtics before?
Hell to the yeah. Last year, Game 7, I had a party of 300 people watching the game. Jimmy Butler shot one in the air. The whole crowd absolutely silent. We thought we were about to get shocked right in front of our face. I'll be ignorant to disregard that factor of it, but I will say this: like watching the Celtics this year and the additions that they have, I feel like they would have gave Miami the business too. But this one is more like a sigh of relief. Let's mess around with these pesky Hawks, but I do not see them beating the Celtics more than once.
Oh, understandably so. And obviously, Atlanta has had their own transitions that they've made throughout the season. But when we talk about playoffs, a lot of times, the fans, we love basketball, but we want to see like one-on-one matchups. So specifically, are there any 2 players you're looking forward to seeing going head-to-head in this playoff round?
It's not so much the players on the court. It's about the TD Garden is known for the wildest fans.
That's actually
and this guy with the bad hair on the Atlanta Hawks, we're going to go the fans against Trae, and we're going to give him the business. We're going to get in his head before he even goes back home to Atlanta for Game 3. His feathers are going to be ruffled after that. But
I was just talking to some kid he called him Trae Old, and I didn't even understand what he was talking about, but I was like, all right, kids be having the worst burns. I'm going to tell you that. Trae Old about to be old after this one.
Trae Old, I like that one. I like that's t-shirt quality right there. Trae Old.
I shouldn't be laughing at that. Don't laugh at that. That's not...
Garrett, she ain't talking about us being old for once.
No, we're just talking about Trae.
She's talking about Trae.
Shout out to my friend Raquel, it was her son who made that joke.
I do think Trae will enjoy being the villain in this series, and
for sure.
I don't know. It's hard. I don't know what you think, GRD. It's hard to determine what Atlanta is. Like Miami is trying to win a championship, even though they're old and they look terrible. Atlanta's sort of like they're like game 23 into the Quin Snyder era. Like they ain't figured it out yet. Like I don't know if they're gonna be like, yeah, we can really win this series. And they're like, listen, we're gonna make some changes in the offseason. We're gonna make some adjustments. But let's just play this out and see what happens. What did you think of the Hawks' performance in the playing game?
So, I mean, they came out and they shocked the world. Nobody had them winning versus Miami yesterday. And that part of this series, it's something to talk about. Like, are they going to come in here with the killer instinct? My opinion on it, I'm a military guy. I will tell my players, go into this battle. You got to send these guys home in a body bag back to Atlanta. And same thing that they did after they beat the Brooklyn Nets. They made Kyrie and KD get traded. Now maybe Trae Young's the next one to get traded after the Celtics shove a broomstick up there. I mean, we out here.
Trouble paradise.
He got Trae on the block with ticket out of town.
He's the focus right now. His name is getting bounced around. I know everybody wants to talk about Jaylen Brown. I don't know how you talk about a guy like that on a winning team. Talk about the guy Trae Young that's on the team that cannot win.
Yeah. Well, you brought Jaylen Brown up, which is good because I was going to bring him up as well. As you know, Jaylen had a little boo-boo on the head, 5 stitches. I'm calling it a little boo-boo because I'm trying to just bring myself off the ledge on this
level-headed. Yeah.
So I'm just going to a little boo-boo. How concerned are you about Jaylen and his ability to play the way he has up to now, going into this first game, knowing that he's got 5 stitches in his hand, and we don't really know how that's going to impact him. Are you concerned about Jaylen and what he's able to do? Because it's on the shooting hand too, I might add.
Jaylen Brown is a killer on the court. If this guy steps on the court, I'm not worried about his performance. But bringing him up, I'll say this. I'm one of the fans that I'll live, die for Jaylen Brown. So if your boy Brad Stevens trades my guy Jaylen Brown, we showing up at Brad's house with some we're having a protest out there. Jaylen Brown, I'll put my heart for that, man. If he goes on the court, I trust that he's gonna be 100%. You guys know Jaylen Brown just as well as I do. he is a soldier out there, and that's the guy you want on your team in the playoffs.
This time of year, you all about who's in your bunker. Who can you look to your left, to your right that you know is ready to fight, ready to scrap, ready to go to battle and get that W? And Jaylen's one of those dudes. But what is it about him that resonates with you? Like, what do you like most about Jaylen Brown?
So Jaylen Brown, if I had to say anything, like I'm a father. He's a guy like I'll be happy one day if my son comes to me and asks me for a Jaylen Brown jersey. He's a guy that puts on for the city on the court 100%, that which is very rare these days. Most guys take nights off, this, that. When he's playing, he's trying to win the game, number one. And then for all of the stuff that he's done off the court for the city of Boston, bringing the community together, he strikes a chord with me. And I say that from his beginning story, from the night when everybody didn't really know who the dude was, and they were booing the hell out of him because they wanted to trade the pick, this, that. But if I had to do anything, Jaylen Brown, I'll show that guy the love that we need to show him, you know? He's a real one.
Absolutely.
We love to hear it. Wait, so with that being said, are you one of the fans that get bothered by the which one can we have Jay conversation? It sounds like you're the more level-headed one when it comes to the two stars.
I mean, for the last 6 years, I've been defending both of them on all over the internet and just letting the people know that like most teams will kill to have one of these players, never mind to have two at the same damn time.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot even go into the depths of how the people fight about how they're not friends off the court, this, that. That shit is old news. Anyways, we're going into the playoffs. Two guys that are in entering their primes. We're hoping that this guy gets all NBA so he stays on the Celtics forever. That will be exactly what we want, you know? We want a built championship, not a bought championship.
Facts. Gary, any final questions for our guest?
So is there anything about this team entering this run this year that concerns you?
It definitely comes down to Robert Williams for me. As a fan, I feel like he was the X factor when he went down in the playoffs last year versus Minnesota before the playoffs, actually. He was just never 100%. As much as he tried, and he was playing almost 40 minutes in the final games and stuff, he just wasn't himself. This year, he came back. I feel still we were seeing 70% Robert Williams. If he could get up to 90%, then the Celtics, that's an X factor that he could bang with Clint Capella in this first round, maybe. I just want to see him go to his next level because I feel like this year we just didn't see him get to that next level yet.
Well, there you have it. We got an authentic perspective from a real fan. Green Run.
I really appreciate you guys.
I do want to plug the watch party that you've been having, usually during the playoffs. I think you said you're going to start having one for this first round, correct?
Hey, when the Celtics are out of town, you guys are more than welcome. Bring your family, friends to the parties. It's at Big Night Live right next to the Garden. We're going to do home and away, all Boston sports games, Bruins, Celtics. It's going to be bonkers the next couple months.
I'm going to pop out. Where can people find info about it?
It's on Ticketmaster. All you got to do is search Celtics Boston Watch Party.
It's official.
Thank
you so much for giving us some time. Hopefully we can talk to you for a second round.
Hell yeah. Have a good day, guys. Take care.
You too.
Good to see you.
Grand slams, no hitters, and double plays are back. And there's no better place to get in on all the MLB action than with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook and official partner of Major League Baseball. And new customers in Massachusetts can get in on all the action with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Just sign up at fanduel.com/Boston. Finally, you can bet on all your favorite sports, from the money line to point spreads to player props and so much more. What we love on the A-List podcast about the FanDuel app in general is that it's safe, it's secure, and super easy to use. It doesn't get really any better than that. So don't miss your chance to get $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. You can visit fanduel.com/Boston and make every moment more with FanDuel, the official partner of Major League Baseball. 21 and present in Massachusetts. First online real money wager only. $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire in 14 days. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Hope is here. Gambling help line ma.org or call 1-800-327-5050 for 24/7 support. Play it smart from the start. GameSenseMA.com or call 1-800-GAM-1234.
And welcome to the podcast. We have Lauren Williams, Atlanta Hawks beat writer for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. What's up, Lauren? What's going on with you, girl?
What's up? I'm recovering from a bunch of excitement yesterday. Flew in from Miami back to Atlanta today. So we're still sleepy, but we're here. Yeah. We're here.
Yes, you are here.
And we appreciate you hopping on because I know the jet lag is crazy right now. So it really means a lot to have a real in the field perspective of what's going on and who the Celtics are about to play. Sherrod, I interrupted you. My bad.
You keep running.
Yeah, I was actually just telling them I selfishly already planned for this to happen. Last week on the pod, we did mention it would be Atlanta or Miami, and thankfully it's Atlanta. But let's just start with your overall perspective of the Hawks right now. I know it's a restructuring year for the team, but what have you seen over the last few months as they've still tried to figure out what their identity is really?
Yeah, I wouldn't say so much that it's restructuring. I think that they kind of, for the most part, understand that they have some talented guys. They just have to figure out how best to utilize them. And with Quin Snyder in the fold now, I think they'll get a better idea or a better sense of the direction that they want this roster to go. I think over the last 20 games of the regular season, since Snyder took over, he's gotten a pretty good idea of maybe who he wants on the roster, who he doesn't want. And I know the Hawks would like to make sure that things are clarified as far as how much power Quin Snyder has. And he says he just wants to be there to coach. But, it's still hard for me to believe that he won't have some sort of say in what, or some opinion of what he believes a championship caliber roster is. So I think this team is learning, but I wouldn't necessarily say that they're restructuring so much. And it seems that they're finally hitting some kind of stride, and what a time for them to do it now that they're in the postseason.
Yeah. Along those same lines, Lauren, Trae Young had, I thought, a really good game against Miami. 25 points, 8 rebounds, 7 assists, did a little bit of everything, had his usual high number of turnovers, but that makes him pretty much everyone in the top 10, top 15 in assists. They turn the ball.
Right.
But I'm curious, you touched on Quin Snyder just kind of really evaluating, to some extent, who is going to be around beyond that. Where does Trae fit in that conversation? Because obviously, statistically speaking, he's the best player, but he would not be the first best player on the team to get moved and won't be the last. Where does he fit into, what Quin Snyder's vision is for this team going forward?
I think Quin has a lot of respect for the talent that Trae is, and I think they're still learning each other so much. And so I think going into the offseason, this is going to be a huge offseason to kind of figure out where Trae does fit into what Quin's vision of this system should be. And of course, we know Trae comes with the reputation of being a guy who can get coaches bumped, moved, whatever you want to say,
Coach Killer,
from their post.
I'll say it.
But I think this is going to be a chance for him to show that, he can fit into what a coach who has taken a team like the Utah Jazz to the playoffs multiple times, what that demands. And so this is a chance for him to mature and grow up. And if he doesn't, then, perhaps, like you said, he's a point guard that will be on the move, and it's another team might be able to come in and scoop him up. But it's still hard for me to believe what the market will be for a guy who has the reputation that he does.
All right, I want to kind of go and dig further into Trae. Like, Trae seems to be like, he came into the league, he was this fresh-faced, Steph Curry-like player, where it was like, oh, how cute. He's just a little guy who shoots 40-footers. Yeah. He was just this guy that everybody loved. And then no one knew how well he was going to do. Then he ended up obviously being very good, doing very well, making all-star teams and leading it. But now there's this, like Sherrod said, kind of coach killer reputation. is Trae a guy who at this stage, is he about his numbers? Does he want to win? Does he only want to win his way? Is he delusional in terms of his talent? Like, getting to know him over the year, like, how would you type, is he just a guy who just has had a couple of coaches that just happenstance with Nate McMillan and Lloyd Pierce just didn't it just didn't work, and both, what kind of guy is Trae? And, is he a winner, or is he a guy that's like, listen, I got my 35, 15 assists, I'm good?
I think it's that second to last point that you made where it just might be happenstance that Nate McMillan and Lloyd Pierce just weren't the right fit for the type of player that he is. Now, that goes back to my point, though, that if he and Quin Snyder can't figure out what exactly is the best way to bring out the best in him, then I could see him being the guy on the move versus Quin Snyder, who the Hawks went out convinced to come in with 20 or so games left in the season to try and get them into a perennial championship winning team, or at least a perennial playoff team. So I think he has a lot to prove right now, not so much as what he can do stats wise, because I think we know what that is. I think more so where Trae's sense of growth is being that mature leader that we just haven't necessarily seen just yet. And that doesn't necessarily mean that he has to be a rah-rah guy that rallies his team around him, but he has to be the guy that can get everybody to buy in to what the coach is selling. And I think because he's the face of the franchise, he has a lot of pressure to rise to that occasion. And he just hasn't done that yet. And I think it's just happenstance that the circumstances ended up being that the two coaches that were his first couple coaches in the league ended up getting bounced. But he's 24 if you think about it, 2 years removed from college, and most of us didn't even know who we were at 24 years old. So you want to give him a little bit of grace to kind of mature a little bit and figure things out. But the time is ticking on that aspect of him being the franchise player, face of the franchise of the Atlanta Hawks.
So you mentioned you're obviously just in Miami, you've been following the team all season, but after their win against Miami, what was the reaction from the team, and what kind of sense are you getting of how they're looking forward to this matchup against Boston?
Yeah, I mean, Gary was in the room with me when we got a chance to interview the guys post game, and I think the biggest thing is that they don't want to celebrate a play-in win too long just because it's a play-in. I think they're very much ready to go for the playoffs. They know that they do have a lot to prove, particularly because 17 ESPN panelists said that they didn't have a chance to beat the Heat, and they took that very personally. At least Dejounte Murray took it personally enough to address it on Twitter right after the game. So I think there's a sense of them knowing that right now they're the underdog and not a lot of people have faith in what they might be able to do. But listen, the Celtics team, they were number one in the East for a really long time, and for good reason. And they've swept the Hawks in all three of their games in the regular season. So they've got a tall task ahead of them. And I can imagine Quin Snyder's game planning from the moment he stepped on the plane after that Miami game last night.
Yeah, and part of that game planning, I would imagine, they did a heck of a job rebounding the ball against Miami. They're going to be that good against Boston. But I was more impressed by the production they got from their bench. And how much of a factor do you think that second unit of the Hawks will be against a Boston Celtics team that has some depth? But I mean, we've talked about this before. And a couple of Celtics killers on that team, and I'm thinking specifically about Sadiq Bey, who gets buckets. Starting, coming off the bench, walking off the plane, he's getting buckets in Boston. Talk a little bit about just that second unit and just how impactful they could be in this series.
I think this is the moment for the second unit to shine. Since Quin came in, since the All-Star break, I mean, they've been firing on all cylinders. You've got a guy like Jaylen Johnson who's been playing out of his mind. He's a super athletic four. He can take the ball up the floor, and he just unlocks a few different things in the Hawks offense. You see the connection that he has with Onyeka Okongwu, and then we're seeing kind of the rise in Onyeka Okongwu and being able to guard some of those smaller players out on the perimeter, but he still has the mobility to get back into the paint and still protect the rim. So I think when you think about this bench unit, those two guys are still kind of unlocking their shot. But as you mentioned with Sadiq Bey and then, of course, Bogdan Bogdanovic, they've got a lot of shooting and spacing with those two. And Bogey's been shooting about, I want to say 45% since the All-Star break, which is a heck of a lot more than when he came back for those first 25 games that he had when he returned from a knee injury. So if he can knock those shots down, play aggressively, the Hawks can move the ball a little bit more, whether that's with Dejounte Murray or Trae Young, whoever is leading that second unit in that rotational moment. I think that they'll be able to kind of burn the Celtics maybe a little bit from three, but this team has kind of struggled consistently as a whole with knocking shots down, just because they do have a habit of, whether it's DeAndre Hunter or John Collins or sometimes Trae Young, Dejounte Murray, they get into moments where they want to ISO and it just ends up making the offense just stick and bad things happen for them. So if they can continue to get everybody involved, and that includes the bench unit, I think that's where you're going to see a really heavyweight battle between these two teams.
Hey, Lauren, I want to ask about John Collins.
Yeah.
Okay. The dude who's been on the trade block for like 10 years. I mean, poor guy. He don't do nothing but play hard, does his thing, and he's always on the block. He's longer than he's on the Miles Turner plan. Like those two guys were on the trade block for 5 years, and then Indiana signs Turner to an extension.
Yeah.
How is chemistry better now? Is John feeling like, hey, I'm an Atlanta Hawk? Or is he feeling like I'm gonna ball up because I might be traded in the summer? Like, what's his chemistry like? And then you brought up like Jalen Johnson, and obviously it seems like Coach Snyder has changed rotations and pushed some of the veterans to the bench. And he got young. Someone tweeted like perhaps his best move since taking over was putting Jalen Johnson into the rotation, and younger and more athletic. What's the team chemistry like? How has John Collins adapted to it? And this is a team that you've been around the Pistons. This may not be a great example, but they're good. They're a bunch of young guys. Yeah. Is this team like close, or are they just trying to make it work? Or how's the chemistry, especially with a guy like John Collins?
Yeah, I would actually say that this team, they do have some pretty good chemistry off the court. I would say that they're a team, you can get the sense that they all genuinely like each other. The question comes up, do they like playing with each other sometimes? That's where I'm kind of like, I'm not sure. But I think when everybody is getting involved in that backcourt is making sure that they're making a concerted effort to have as many touches with all five players, getting into as many options as possible, then good things happen for them. And with John Collins, I think he's been empowered by Coach Snyder a lot to shoot the ball. He's been working with Kyle Korver a bit, to whether that's his shot form or the mental aspect of shooting, which he struggled with at the beginning of the season. And I think we're seeing the benefits of that because he's been shooting, in the last 15 games of the regular season, he was shooting about 45.5% from three, which is a pretty good number when you think about that. And so I think because Snyder has forced those guards to make sure that they're getting into second actions a little bit more, not settling for shots, making sure that everybody gets those touches, and that message has been sinking in a little bit more and building those really good habits of not just chucking up a random three because you feel like you're open. I think that's kind of helped to bring a little bit more cohesion to them on the court. But of course, the better John Collins plays, the more people might be willing to take on that contract, which of course is one of the reasons why he's still on the Hawks, even though he's been in the trade talks or trade rumors for the last 2-3 years. So I do think though that with Snyder, he's kind of figured out ways to bring out the strengths of some of these guys, or at least make them feel empowered to do what we know they can do, which is something it seems a lot of the guys on this team said they didn't have under Nate McMillan. And that's not to say that Nate McMillan didn't have a vote of confidence in them so much. I guess he was just different in terms of how he expressed it. And I think the way that Coach Snyder is, you see him on the sideline, he's always coaching, he's always moving, he's cracking smiles and jokes with the guys whenever they come off the court and go sit down. So I just think it's a little bit of a different environment and things are a little bit looser now. And so we're seeing good things happen because the guys are a little bit more relaxed. They're getting a little bit more hands-on coaching in the moment.
Nate wasn't about that smile in life.
No,
Not
stoic. Never knew what that man was thinking.
I love that. Players.
Yeah.
The thing about running your own business is every single hire counts, and no hiring partner understands that like Indeed. Indeed is a hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Don't spend hours on multiple job sites looking for candidates with the right skills when you can do it all with Indeed. Find top talent fast with Indeed's suite of powerful hiring tools like the Indeed Instant Match tool, assessments, and virtual interviews. Hate waiting? Indeed's US data shows over 80% of Indeed employers find quality candidates whose resume on Indeed matches their job description the moment they sponsor a job. Candidates you invite, that's something that we like on our podcast, the Instant Match tool. When you candidates that you invite, you apply through Instant Match, they're actually 3 times more likely to apply to your job than candidates who only see it in search, according to US Indeed data. With Instant Match, as soon as you sponsor a job, you get a short list of quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed match your job description, and you can invite them to apply right away. Indeed does all the hard work for you. Sponsor a job, and boom, Instant Match shows you candidates whose resumes on Indeed fit your job description immediately after you post. With Instant Match, you can start hiring fast. Join over 3 million businesses worldwide using Indeed to hire great talent fast. Indeed knows that when you're doing everything for your company, you can't afford to overspend on hiring. Just visit Indeed.com/A-list to start hiring now. Once again, Indeed.com/A-list. Indeed.com/A-list. Terms and conditions apply. Cost per application pricing not available for everyone. Need to hire? You need Indeed. Yeah, looking forward to the matchup specifically. Is there anyone on the team that you think should be considered an X factor that would help them potentially get to another round?
On the Hawks or the Celtics?
Okay, yeah, sorry, the Hawks.
I think, and a lot of people have been saying it over and over, but if DeAndre Hunter can get into if the Hawks can just find a way to get DeAndre Hunter into a rhythm, we know what he can do on the defensive end. And I think in Tuesday's game against the Heat, he suffered from getting into foul trouble really early and just couldn't get going. But when he was kind of getting into a little bit of a rhythm, you started to see it going. He was finding the right open looks. He had Bogey on the wing, collapsing the Heat defense really well. And so if you can unlock a little bit more of that, I think that could be an X factor, just because you never know if he's going to take it into the paint, if he's going to kick it out, shoot the three, if he decides to stay on the perimeter and Trae's the ball handler, or Dejounte's the ball handler, or whoever. But I think that's the X factor. And then, of course, if John Collins can shoot like we know that he can, I think that's going to be a really good one. But the other thing is, we've already touched on it, the bench. If they can produce, get the energy up whenever things fall a little bit stagnant, I think that's going to help them win some series down the stretch, because that means the starters don't have to be in for that long, or you can have a little bit more balance between both units.
We touched a little bit on just kind of Trae earlier, and the reason why I just made that expression about DeAndre, because you put the brother in bubble wrap, he might stay healthy enough to help the team in a game. Another story, another day. My question to you is about Dejounte Murray, who I love as a player. He's one of my favorite players to watch. He's got a legitimate dog in him.
Yes.
And my question to you is, how has that been working with Trae? Because Trae is very talented, but in all due respect to Trae, he ain't got the kind of dog in that Dejounte has. How have they been able to mesh on the floor when really there's a lot? It seems like there's scenarios down the stretch where you ideally want Dejounte making some type of decision, being more of kind of that lead dog, if you will, whereas there's a tendency, it seems, that they defer to Trae. How would they make that relationship work?
I think unfortunately, they're still figuring it out. I wish that they had figured it out, not necessarily right now, or I think what they suffered from early on, it was, okay, you go to the bench now, I have to produce, I have to make this my moment. Okay, now you're back on, this is your time to shine, and you do you. But I think when they're at their best is when, they're both making those sacrifices at the same time and reading the game as it dictates, not necessarily deferring, but just, okay, I'm the guy that's attacking and collapsing the paint a little bit more than you might be. You move off the ball and we can be the pick your poison that people expected us to be. So I think they're still learning from each other, but I think Dejounte kind of fits exactly what Quin Snyder is used to working with. So time will tell if he's the guy that decides to stick around after his contract is up and, he's ready to go in free agency, which you would hate to happen because the Hawks gave up 3 first-round picks for him. But yeah, I think they're still learning exactly what sacrifices they need to make at the right moments, not necessarily sacrificing as I defer to you when you're on the court, or you defer to me when, or whatever. So.
Yeah. Last one for me, Lauren. Generally, very rarely does a coach come in like usually they would have fired Nate and then filled the last of the season with an interim and then took the off season to look for a dude, widen the coaching search. There was rumors that Ime Udoka was in the mix. What's the transition been like? And I remember asking Dejounte this last night. He's like, "Well, you ain't gonna get me to compare the two." Coach Nate got kind of defensive, like, my bad, brother. Like, I wasn't trying to get you to badmouth Nate.
No.
But what's the transition been like when a coach like this? Because it's a rare situation. I don't think I've experienced. We've all covered coaching changes, but never where the permanent coach takes in the middle of the season. What's it been like to the transition to Quin Snyder? Obviously, he just can't come in there and go like, okay, I'm taking the hell over and this, you do that. I did notice that Dejounte was taking more threes. Like he's the mid-range specialist. And I remember pregame you asked him about, Dejounte, and he said, hey, I'll be stupid not to tell him to shoot mid-range, but I do want him to shoot threes. He looks more comfortable. What's been the impact of Coach Snyder over the last 2 months that you've seen?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is exactly what you just said. He's been empowering guys to take those threes. And he said it pregame, postgame. He would rather you take that shot and live with it, whether it's make or miss, versus hesitating and settling for a 2 when, maybe you could have gotten the 3. And yesterday it worked out in the Hawks' favor really well, just because they were able to get some of those long offensive boards to create those second chance opportunities and then they were able to catch the Heat, of course, sleeping a little bit because they weren't quite ready for those second chance looks. But I think the biggest thing is just that the Hawks just feel a lot more empowered to take those shots. We talked about a guy like Jalen Johnson. He's still working through that, not hesitating, pump fake, and then going inside, but we're still seeing him knock those shots down. Same with John Collins. Before Quin came in, he might have hesitated and gone inside, but now we're just seeing guys just try to let it fly as opposed to trying to make something work, go in isolation, and then turn the ball over. So I think that's helped the Hawks kind of cut down a bit on, their turnovers, even though they haven't really been a team that has a high turnover rate, but I think it has helped. It helps the ball move a little bit more. It gives the offense a little bit more time to get set so that they can get some of those offensive rebounds if they're available. So I think the biggest thing is he's just kind of feeding things to them a little bit piecemeal at a time. And what's funny is there was a game, I believe it was against the Timberwolves in Minnesota, and he kind of threw a play out there that they'd never practiced before. Of course, they'd watched it on film with various teams and they see how the action works, but they'd never practiced it together. But that just shows how much faith he has in this group of guys that they can make something work without, having to ever practice it with a particular rotation in place. So I think the biggest thing is that he just has a lot of confidence in them. And so therefore they feel confident to do things that maybe they wouldn't have done under McMillan.
Well, we're looking forward to hosting you back here in Boston. That's, of course, Lauren Williams from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. We talk about supporting local journalism. Yes, we mean Boston, but also make sure you check out her Hawks Report podcast as well. If you want to get a different perspective of other teams in the league, make sure you're checking out. Lauren, thank you so much for your time. And again,
And one of the few females covering the NBA. So kudos to Lauren for putting in that work.
Follow her on Twitter as well.
You know, especially black women, but one of the few females covering the league. So that's awesome.
Absolutely.
Thank you guys so much.
She went to a great school for grad school as well.
Go Orange.
All right. We didn't need all that. Lauren Williams, Lauren L on Twitter.
We're doing so well, Lauren. We're doing so well.
And on that note, thank you. Thank you.